Yeah, good. Very good. Tervetuloa Saranai. Very good to everybody. Very good. So Gehotu. So yes, my name is Ajahn Mudito. I've been a monk now for 12 vasa, so not that long, but I think long enough so I can start teaching slowly. I've never been in Sri Lanka. People always ask us if we go to Sri Lanka. I've never been there, unfortunately. Hopefully one day I meet you all there in person. It would be very nice. I'm originally from Finland. I have lived here in Australia now since 2010, so it's my 13 years I've been here now. I have my Australian passport. I have my dual citizenship. I'm Finnish and Australian. I've never been Australia really, even though I have Australian passport. I've never been outside of the monastery. 2009, I came here on my Christmas break. I just went directly to monastery. And 2010, I came to a monastery. I just been here, and my computer say my internet connection is unstable. So again, unfortunately, we live in the forest, as forest monks always do, and our internet is not very good. So hopefully, we just keep going as much as we can, and hopefully, there's not too many disconnections. So, like I said, I'm Finnish, and people quite often ask me, why did I become a monk? I think quite often you get to hear these normal Dhamma desanas where people, as obviously we monks, we always try to concentrate on the Buddha's word, and same for me. I'm always been inspired by Ajahn Brahm and Ajahn Brahmali, obviously with the suttas, and that's where I like to concentrate. But I just tell a little bit of my own story. I think it's quite often interesting for you to hear how as Westerners, how do we get into the Buddhism? As Sri Lankans, you perhaps get Buddhism from your mother's milk. You're born as a Buddhist. And so as Finns or the Westerners, we're not. So I got born I don't know how I managed to get born in Finland. What was my karma to get there to the cold climate? I've been calling my mom and dad recently, and it's been over below -30 just recently on past few weeks. And mom and dad just said that they don't even want to go outside when it's so cold. They just heating up the house and stay indoors. So you're very lucky in Sri Lanka. So I was born in the northern part of Finland, and I did my schooling there. I ended up. I'm just really like a farm boy, really. All the previous generation up to me, everybody's been just farmers. My father has a construction company, and that's part of what I've studied as well. And I worked most of my time in construction. But I always have a dream. I always wanted to travel overseas and see the world, and I did end up going different parts of the world, seeing the world, and studying in different parts of the world. And then I ended up in United States. That was early 2000s. I was always looking for something in the world. If you haven't found your place really, you're always looking for something. And I was always looking for. I always thought there was missing something in life. Surely there must be something which I will find. World always seems to be quite empty if you don't have some kind of practice or faith or some kind of group you really belong to. And I think that's important for you. For you, it's perhaps easy. Like I said, you're sort of born as a Buddhist, which I'm sort of don't really believe that you get born as a Buddhist. Buddhism is something you need to practice. You don't just get born as a baby and you're Buddhist. You need to keep practicing. But so I ended up in United States. I worked there for a translation company. Language seemed to be something I enjoy, so I worked translation company. Then later on, I went to work in a hotel, and then I have a little bit of visa left in United States. I've been there 3.5 years, I think, something like that. I was in San Francisco. I was really busy on my life, when you're going through the school years, you're in the university, you're busy, and plus Like I said, I really come from like a farming background, so there was no way my mom and dad could support me. So I always had to support myself. I had to work and go to university at the same time. So I was always really, really busy. Even in the United States, I got my second degree there. I had to go to school in the mornings, then I always worked at a night shift. So I was always, and plus because I worked in a hotel and a restaurant, I was pretty much working always on the weekends on a night shift. So I worked pretty hard. And when I was in, but when you're young, you have a lot of energy. Anyway, so then I had one more year left in my visa. So I thought I always wanted to go to New York. There's something about New York which always thought it was really interesting. So I packed my things into my car. I didn't have that much things anyways, so I put everything in the car, drove across the country from San Francisco to New York. And I ended up in New York, in Manhattan, and I started to think, now I'm in New York, and surely there's always anything I want to find, it will be in New York. New York is a big city. There's all kind of things available in New York where whatever you want to find, any kind of group you really want to belong, whether it's Hindu, Muslim, Christian, all kind of Buddhism, yoga, spiritualism, music scene, whatever you want, whatever interests you. And I thought, well, I'd done all the other stuff, the non-spiritual stuff. I'm not going to go too deeply into that, but I did all those things what Westerners, as we usually could do. We try to find some entertainment in the world where you think it's very important. But so I thought I was ready, and I had a really good job. This was about 2003 or 4, and that time I managed to get a Google work for Google. I started working for Google, and I was part of the language team. So in those days, 2003, I'm not sure. I think it's 2003, something like that, or 4. Actually, it might be 4 because I think it's 20 years now. So 20 years ago, I was there, and it was amazing because I could work from home. And 20 years ago, these days, working from home is more and more common, especially for us, the Westerners here in Australia or in Finland. I'm sure in Sri Lanka, there's some work from home. So I was working from home for Google, doing the language team. I was part of the Finnish language team, and I started to look around. So I always thought there's something in this world which I belong to. I always feel like a little bit of an outsider. My family was perhaps Christians, but in Finland we're very secular Christians. We would never really go even to church. Perhaps we would go and listen to Christmas carols. In Finland, it's a thing. You go to church in Christmas time and listen to carols, and basically you just go there for the music. Nothing spiritual per se. So I grew up as a Christian, and people ask me what religion are you? And in the United States, because it's a new country, same like Australia. It's a new country. There's nobody really who is native. Of course, we have native people in both the United States and Australia, but a lot of these new countries like Australia and the United States, everybody, we come from somewhere. Our families, whether it's first generation or second generation, third generation, we always come from somewhere. Like for us in Finland, we don't have to really explain to us to each other because we know what your background is. Same in Sri Lanka, you know, sort of what kind of schooling you go to, what's your culture, this and that. But when you go to a new culture, people always ask you about your cultural things. So people always ask me, what religion are you? And I said, look, I was born as a Christian, but we weren't really practicing Christians. But I always thought I was Buddhist. I always thought that's something I want to be. But I never really came across Buddhism. I lived in Finland. I come from northern part of Finland. It's a remote part. Before time of the internet, there was no possibility I could even come across. Even now, there's hardly any books in Finnish about Buddhism. Then I studied in Spain, then I was in the United States, I was busy, but finally I landed in New York. So now I'm there and I start looking Buddhism. And first of all, I thought maybe I don't dare to go so deep straight away. Maybe I start with meditation. That sounds interesting. Yoga and meditation. That's it, it doesn't sound too religious, so I can go with that. So I started looking at these groups of where you could do yoga and meditation. I just really close to me where I lived, there was this one place where all these different groups were renting a place. And it was a yoga classes there, and there were classes for different Buddhist groups. So what used to go there was Tibetan groups used to go there, mindfulness groups, just secular. They're not really, you wouldn't call them Buddhist per se, perhaps that, but some of these mindfulness groups are just, we take everything out of this religious side of Buddhism and we just meditate. There's obviously Zen groups, there's Mahayana groups everywhere. But in this place, there was a Theravada group there. And I listened to all of these different teachers. And let me tell you, when you start in Buddhism, when you don't really have a background to Buddhism, it's really difficult. Again, you as a Sri Lankan, you really don't have options. You get Theravada Buddhism. For you, it's just the Dhamma. You know what is important. You understand the concepts. But when you're starting from zero, there is no background information for me. I had gone through the university, all of that. I have enough brain power. I can figure this out. But when you're starting and there is no really guidelines. So I could go with the Tibetan Buddhist, I could go with the Zen Buddhist, Mahayana Buddhist, Theravada Buddhist, and not just that. In all of the different Buddhist cultures, or Buddhist branches, however you want to call them, we all have different teachers and different way of looking at the teachings. So Theravada Buddhism, we have a Burmese Theravada Buddhism, we have a Sri Lankan Theravada Buddhism, we have a Thai Theravada Buddhism, and all different teachers are telling you slightly different things. And boy, it gets really, really confusing really quick. Once you start reading some of the Burmese teachers and they talk about Abhidhamma, and you start reading these books and you're just like, I'm confused. What does all these things mean? You read the Thai teachers, the forest teachers, for example, and they're telling a different story from the Thai city monks. There's a lot of, you go to a temple and there's a lot of devotional practices, which I now understand, obviously being a monk. But when you start, you just look at that and it's like, what are we doing here? Is this what Buddhism is? We're doing the pujas and we recite in this language, which I have no idea what we're doing, in Pali, which I now know. But imagine if you're 20 odd something years old and you are really come from a background where I don't want to have another religion. It looks like a religion when you go to a devotional Buddhist temple. So anyway, I trying to figure these things out. So I'm always going to these different groups in this Buddhist, what they were renting, and I start listening and I ask people, what books do you read? Who do you listen? Those days internet wasn't even. It's amazing how quickly the internet has now come. We have so much Dhamma online, but those days it wasn't available really. But anyway, so I listened as much as I could and trying to figure this thing out. And so one thing I always did, I used to go to the bookstores and I buy these books. I always go to the meditation class and I'm like, I'm just new here. Which book should I read? And they said, go and read Thich Nhat Hanh. Thich Nhat Hanh is a good teacher. He's famous. He's a very compassionate Vietnamese monk. Read Thich Nhat Hanh books. So I go and buy Thich Nhat Hanh books. I read a little bit, 10 pages, 15 pages, 20 pages, and it starts to get a bit boring. And I said, you know what? I'm just going to put it in the bookshelf. I get back to that. Next day, I go to another Buddhist group, and there's, let's say it's Wednesday, and there is the Tibetans are meeting there. So I go and then said, oh, which books do you read? I ask all these people. Oh, I read this Rinpoche. So I go and buy this Rinpoche's book, and I go take it. I buy the book. Go to the bookstore. Really interested. It's going to be really good. I go and buy the book. I start reading 10 pages. Oh, it gets a bit heavy. 15 pages, I'm not so interested. 20 pages, I'm going to put it to the bookshelf. I get back to that later. And I started to get this from all these different traditions, which I would never finish. I'm glad if I would get to the page 30. They're either too philosophical, they boring, or what else can we give, some of these Dhamma books. I'm not trying to be disrespectful, by no means, these Tibetan books. They are really, really technical, and it's same for you. You would now understand a lot of Theravada Buddhism, but go and buy a book on Tibetan Buddhism, buy a book on Zen Buddhism, Mahayana Buddhism, and try to start reading it without any background information. You would be confused. And after a while, you just give up. This doesn't make any sense. And all these different teachers are telling me different things. So after like 6 months of doing this, I started to get really worried. I thought I was a Buddhist. I thought I found something. And one thing, it's really disappointing, because a lot of times in life we get excited about something, and if after that excitement sort of wears out, you stop. And I started to get really worried. I thought I would found something, and I was getting worried I will stop being Buddhist. So then, really nice thing happened. There was this monk, you might have called, his name is Ajahn Brahm. And Ajahn Brahm published his first book. Really what made him famous is the Open Up Door Your Heart. And I went to my meditation class, and this time there was a Theravada class there probably. And I asked these people, what books do you read? And they said, oh, there's this new book. It was really, really interesting book. It's called Ajahn Brahm, and it's Open Up Door Your Heart. I said, oh yeah, okay, another book. I'm going to waste another $20. I'm going to go to the bookstore, go to buy the book. I'm going to read it 20 pages, and I'm going to put it in a bookshelf, and it's going to be there. And I never get back to that. But I thought, okay, well, look, I need to keep trying. So I go to the bookstore. It was like a little bit distance from where I lived in Manhattan. I go to the bookstore, I buy this book, and I start reading it. And sometimes the first chapters are interesting. They put like easy stories in the first chapter in some of the books before they get too philosophical. So I start reading this Ajahn Brahm book, and I was like, oh, this is really interesting. I hope it's going to continue, but I don't think it will. So I go to the cashier, I buy the book, and I start walking on the street. And while walking on the streets in New York, busy streets, I keep reading this book while I'm walking towards my apartment. Oh, these are really interesting stories. I walk to my apartment in East Village, and I keep reading, and I was like, oh wow, this monk seems to know something. This monk seems to be able to write things which are interesting, which I can relate to. It's not too philosophical. It's not just esoteric. It's not just philosophy. It's not just things about which I don't understand. A lot of these stories I can relate to. This monk seems to be a human. These are not just ancient stories, which are just in 2,000 years ago, this miracles thing happened. And I kind of really relate to that. So then I thought it was like, wow, this monk seems to be really nice. So a few months later, Ajahn Brahm came to a book tour. When you publish a book, you go to a book tour. So he came to a book tour to New York, and I met him there. And by this time, I've already started listening to his talks. And nice thing about Buddhist Society of West Australia, where I've been a monk for a long time now, we were one of the first ones to start putting Dhamma talks online. And that's thanks to one of our presidents who was really young at the time. He thought it was a good idea. And so I started always going there, and I'm always listening to the Dhamma talks. And one of the talks, Ajahn Brahm mentions, it's an amazing thing to be a monk. It's a good idea to become a monk. Just try it. Anybody, you should try. And I was listening to this Dhamma talk, and this was, maybe a couple of months after I read his books. I was like, this is amazing. I didn't even know his possibility. I want to be a monk. It's like straight away. One of the things, like, I could not wait. I didn't know there was such a possibility that you can be a monk. I thought it was something, I don't know why I thought it was so unattainable. I didn't know now. It's just never crossed my mind that there is such a thing that you can become a monk. But as soon as Ajahn Brahm said it, I said, that makes complete sense. So then a couple months after that, he came to New York. I met him there. I listened to his talks, he just gave one talk in New York. And then I was going to go and meet him and ask him, can I become a monk? But I didn't dare. I thought he's just going to tell me, you're too young, you shouldn't even try, what are you thinking? Go and, you finish your studies, this and that. So I didn't dare to ask him, actually. So it took me a few more years after that to listen to Ajahn Brahm to actually go and live in a monastery. So that was 2004, and 2009 I went to the monastery there. I was always just sort of postponing the going to the monastery for a few more years, but eventually I had to end up in a monastery. So that's the background story. And then people ask, why did you become a monk? And the honest answer is, well, I don't really know. And if I would know, perhaps there is like a past karma, which we quite often talk about in Buddhism. I couldn't tell as a monk, it's against our precepts. But one thing I always felt when I became a monk, like I could not help. There's nothing else I could do. Even if I always tried something in life, I'm always going towards something. But when you found something precious, you don't want to lose it. When I found Buddhism, when I found Dhamma, I thought I belong here. I thought this is it. I don't have to keep looking in the world. And I could not help but become a monk. I didn't have any more choice. No matter what I would look in the world, perhaps this doesn't mean so much for you, but for me, I tried my career. I traveled everywhere. I studied enough. I did all of those things. I could see where this would lead. I could even see, even if I get the family, once you're getting to the mid 25 to, close to 30, you start thinking, well, maybe I get the family. But then you start looking at, what does family give you? You look around and you see all the other families, all your, parents. How have they done in their life? What happened? And it's like, well, everybody else is doing this. I think I want to be a monk. But it's the same even when I was a practicing layperson, before I became a monk. The Dhamma gives some kind of value to our life. It gives some kind of refuge. It is leading somewhere. In this life, no matter what you have, it doesn't really lead you anywhere. Everything has almost like an expired date. Everything has almost like something you just need to create a meaning. Whereas Dhamma has meaning itself. The meaning of Dhamma is to end the suffering. And if this doesn't inspire you to keep going, and that's what always surprises me especially when I was really starting as a Buddhist. I just wanted to tell everybody about it, and most people are not really interested. Even here in Melbourne, I meet a lot of people, and a lot of the people come to our temple in our city center in Buddhist Society of Victoria. We have a city center. This is the monastery. We have a city center in Melbourne. And I ask a lot of the times the Sri Lankan parents, are you the children Buddhist? And quite often they said, not really. For them, for the children, quite often what it means here, when it's the second generation who are perhaps born here, they came here very young, it just means a devotional practice. It means pujas. It means those kind of things. So we've been I think what we do as Western monks, I think, is quite important in the sense that we try to, because we don't come from that background. We understand why we do pujas. We understand the traditional Buddhist ways of doing things, but we also understand where do these young people come from. So we have very active youth group here, and which is really, really nice to see that they get excited about the Dhamma again. Dhamma is something which doesn't just live in the books. Dhamma has to live in your heart. You need to put the effort yourself. One of my favorite suttas is where Mahanama is passing away, and Buddha's cousin, and Mahanama is worried. What's going to happen to me when I die? How do I know that I find the Dhamma again? I know now Dhamma is precious, perhaps. You are there, you're practicing, you're yogis, you're putting in effort, but what's going to guarantee that you find it again? Like for me, maybe you get unlucky, you get born in northern Finland. That's dangerous. But the Buddha gives a nice answer on that one for the Mahanama. He says, look, if there's a tree which is leaning to west, and there's four strong men, they come to the tree and they cut it from the root. Which way the tree will fall? Will it fall to north, south, east, or west? The Mahanama answers, of course, it will fall to west because it's leaning to west. I'm not sure about these cardinal directions now, whether it was west or east, but I'm just making up. I think it was west. So obviously it's leaning to west. When you cut it down from the root, it will fall to west. And the Buddha says, the same way Mahanama, when you have respect to the Buddha, you have respect to the Dhamma, you have respect to Sangha, and you have a sila as your fourth, you're always leaning towards Nibbana. That's one of my favorite similes. It's a bit longer sutta, but I'm making it short here. But I think we have to remember that, and I have to remind myself, even if I get worried, what's going to happen to me when I die? How do I know? How do I find Dhamma again? So even for me, get born in northern Finland, freezing temperatures, no Dhamma there, by all means. When I came across to it, I know that's right. This sounds right. This is the way. And it's the same for you. You need to get inspired now about the Dhamma. You need to keep leaning, ending the suffering slowly. You need to see that this is the path to happiness. And the happiness, the more you lean towards that happiness, you're leaning towards Nibbana. It's natural. So no matter what happens, what can you take as your sustenance? What can you take as in your backpack when you go to the next life? What is your sustenance? It's your kamma. You only take your kamma with you. So if you have a kamma to lean towards the Dhamma, again, next lifetime, you will find it. There's no other way. You will find the precious thing again. And same for me. Look, no matter where you go in the world, you know what the flavor is. You know which way to lean. So it is a really, I think it's very nice thing to think about it in this way. When we appreciate something, we hold it very carefully. We give value to it. And that's why obviously we call it the ratana, it's like a jewel. Dhamma is like a jewel where we need to keep investigating, we keep looking at it, we keep practicing ourselves. It is not something just we worship. If we just worship something, it doesn't really work for us. I come from a little bit more from the Thai tradition, although I haven't really lived in Thailand, even if I come from the Thai forest tradition. But in Thai tradition, there's people who we call Vesak Buddhists. And Vesak Buddhists are people who just go to monastery once a year. They go at Vesak time, and they take the 5 precepts. Sometimes they don't even take 5 precepts. Sometimes you see, because they take in Thailand, they take their hand and they take 5 precepts. Sometimes you see when people take 5 precepts, they only have 4 fingers up. I don't know how low can you go, like how many fingers you're putting down when you take 5 precepts. Okay, well, I sort of take 5 precepts, but I don't promise the 5th so much, or the 4th. So how much of a lean do you have when you are Vesak Buddhist, when you go to the temple once a year? You don't meditate, you don't read the Dhamma, you don't put the effort to listen to the Dhamma, you don't respect the Buddha Dhamma Sangha, you don't keep your sila. How much lean do you think you have? Not much. Let's say you're a very good person. There's a lot of good people in the world. The world is full of good people. You are like a straight tree, straight person. Which way the lean is? There's no really lean. You are a straight person. You're an honest person. You're a good person. You're a kind person. Like I said, world is full of good people. Which way you're going to fall? You don't know. You don't really know which way the wind will take you. So we need to have a Dhamma as a sort of like a guidance. We need to have, sometimes it feels like we don't have a rudder. It's like a big ship. It's your Kamma, it's like a ship, like a tanker. And I think I'm borrowing this simile from Ajahn Brahmali. And it's like a big ship. And how much do you think, if you have a oil tanker, how much you can change the direction? If you go and poke the oil tanker, you just go and really, I need to do something. I need to go that direction. Will the oil tanker move this direction? No, it won't. It actually moves slowly, but we don't see it. Every effort you put, it keeps it moving. If we don't put the effort in, if we don't come there to meditate, if we don't listen to the Dhamma, if we don't keep the sila, all of that thing moves the direction. Again, I guess you could say, I'm maybe making a new simile, but you are sailing towards Nibbana. So sometimes, this is quite an interesting point. Sometimes they take us from our monastery, and quite often, because it's Sri Lanka stay, we start talking in Dhamma in the car, and there's been many cases where I've been asked, does it really matter the last mind moment? I don't know, it seems to be a Sri Lankan question. Thais never asked this. Does it really matter so much? Is it really important? It seems to be a thing. And I was a bit confused in the first times I started hearing this question, because, like I said, the other Malaysians or Thais or the other Buddhists, they don't really talk about it so much. But quite often, the Sri Lankans always ask me the question, the last mind moment. But if you think about Kamma in a sense that it's like a moving direction. It's like the tree leaning, like the oil tanker. Let's say we go back to that simile of the tree. If the tree is leaning towards west, and the last mind moment is something different, will it change the direction? Not really. The Buddha never really talked about those kind of last mind moments. Sure, every mind moment is sort of different. Whatever supports the mind, you probably know all these too well. Anatta, whatever supports the mind is like the roof rafters, or what you made the reeds out of the roof. Whatever the mind itself is nothing. Whatever supports the mind, that's what we call them. That's what we call mind. That's the name of the mind. So whether it's sanya or vedana, all of those things, perceptions or feelings, or your volition, whatever supports the mind, that's what the mind is called. There's no really, mind itself is nothing. Mind itself, if it's like the Buddha gave the simile of the reed. One reed cannot support itself, it will fall. So if there's nothing to support the mind, it will fall. So whatever the mind moment is, that's what the mind is. So okay, we go back to the idea of last mind moment. You lived good life. You are a caring person. You kept your sila. You meditated. You're respecting the Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha. You did those things. You investigated the Dhamma. You pondered it. You looked at from the different angles. All of those things. I don't understand how you would be worried at the last mind moment would negate that, would change that course of direction. It doesn't make any sense. It cannot be like that. Sure, I know, as you read the sutras as I do, that there is things like somebody goes to hell because of their one action. They lie to their husband. Perhaps, but then that mind moment, that thought of I lied, or whatever it is, that regret would only last a very, very short time. It's the big things what matter. Big things that you keep your sila, not for one day a year, but throughout the year. You keep your sila decade after decade. How would your sila all of a sudden not matter when your death moment comes? What death is not really a moment, but when you start moving into the next life. I just don't get that. It doesn't make sense to me. And that's why I was really confused when I started getting that question. I've been asked that a few times. And I pretty much give always the same similes and same answer. So that's why I always try to inspire whoever comes to the monastery, or when I teach you there in Sri Lanka. I never met you before, but yet I feel that we are similar kind of people. We are leaning to same direction. We are almost like a family, like a Dhamma family. We support each other. You support the Sangha, I support you by inspiring. What kind of dana can a monk give? Monks don't give food. Monks don't give, we don't handle money. All of those things, monks don't give dana in a sense. But the dana we give is inspiration. The dana we give is keeping the Dhamma alive over the centuries. And one thing that really, really inspires me quite often is that there's been all this good Sangha before me. I cannot misbehave. Personally, I cannot do that. But it's same for you. There's been all the people before you, all the yogis before you, not just you, who have kept this practice going. Perhaps you're not Sangha, but you are part of the Buddha's dispensation. You are part of the fourfold community. Without you, we don't exist. We don't exist without any one of you. So just remember, it's very important what you do. Maybe you are frustrated today when you're meditating. Maybe you had something which just keeps coming to your mind. Try to inspire yourself some way. The Buddha had similar kind of problems we have. He was a human. Buddha was not a heavenly being. It's like, when we sometimes with the contemplation, and anusati is the Pali word, which you know. Contemplation, we say in English. We have devanusati, anusati, contemplation of the devas. We don't really just think about, sure, it inspires us to think that deva beings would protect us, who are, they get inspired here in the Dhamma as well. And, that's for me, it's quite nice to think about it sometimes. And, especially in the monastery, I think about it. But when you're doing Devanusati, you think about the sila, what the devas have. You are like deva being when you're keeping your sila. You are leaning towards that direction. Don't think it's the end. No. We need to end all of this, not even Devaloka as the end, the ultimate, the everlasting happiness. No, that doesn't work either. But if you want to inspire yourself, think about anusati, contemplating of the devas. You are like deva when you're doing these practices. And that's why you dress up in whites. That's why you keep your sila. That's why you're doing these things. You're naturally leaning towards there. Sure, there are frustrations in life. You know it. There is no happiness in samsara. The happiness is leaving it more and more behind. No matter what you expected, samsara will never fulfill it. But this path, it's not a path of suffering. And that's why you are listening, I think, of Ajahn Brahm. It is a path of happiness. This path has to lead to happiness. So whenever you do these practices, start seeing what you have left behind. Not how difficult it is now, or how many hours I have to sit, how frustrating this is. You need to change your perception. Think about what you have left behind. It's very important. You have left behind suffering. The more you practice, more suffering you leave behind. This is a path of happiness. And same for me. As a monk, I've left so many things, so many sufferings in life behind me now. And it's very nice. I mean, one thing at the moment, we're building a retreat center here in Newbury, and I'm quite involved with that. As a monk, I have to make sure that the money goes to the right place. I have to be sometimes a bit tough. And it's quite frustrating. And our builders in Australia, they're not very respectful. By all means. They're not like I'm sure in Sri Lanka you struggle sometimes with builders as a layperson, they don't give you respect. But in Australia, monks, we get yelled at. We get swearing at. They really, and the words I have to get sometimes abused. It's not easy. And I'm sure monks in Sri Lanka don't get this kind of. So it's a good practice for me. I could practice metta and equanimity, all those nice things. But I was just driving there the other day, and I saw the builder there. Nothing happening. It's just so frustrating because we have the money and we just cannot get workers. And I drove past the building site, and I was going to give a talk there, other part of the monastery. And I was looking at the building site, and I was thinking the builders, and I was thinking in my mind, I don't have any anger towards them. I'm not angry at them. I've left that thing behind. I'm not so angry anymore. Okay, yeah, I can be frustrated a little bit. Samsara is like that. Frustrations happen. I know it's a difficult time in Australia. Everybody has too much work. I know that we are far away in the forest here from Melbourne. The workers don't want to travel this far. I understand. I understand the builder is suffering, and we have lawyers in this case now. But I'm not angry at anybody. I'm not angry at them. And I cannot really even say I'm really disappointed. I'm just like, that's the reality. Samsara is what it is. And recently, it's interesting, I was looking this one word, writing. What's the word in writing in Pali, which I now forget? And it doesn't exist in many places. We have few places in Vinaya and in the Dhamma writing. And it's almost like scribing somewhere. They use the word writing, but it means more like scribing. And the Buddha gave an interesting simile on that. He said, there's three kind of people which have anger. There's three kinds of people in this world which have anger. That's one of the very few suttas where this word exists. And he said the first person is like a stone. He said, there's a beach in, I don't know, I think you have Colombo, you have beach. It's like a stone on the beach. And when you scribe on it, it's been, written on it, writing, but not scribing. It's first person, it's like the person with this on a stone, and it's been, really scribbling. And no matter, the waves come sometimes to that stone, the wind blows the sand, and it's like, it takes a long, long time that scribing to disappear from that stone. That's the first person with an anger. They hold on to anger. We could probably say frustration. We could probably say all kind of things. They hold on to something. That's the person with, being described into a stone. Then there's a second person. It's like a person which is lines scribed into a sand. When you're lying in the sand, the wind comes and slowly erodes. Then when the wave comes, it washes away. So that's the second kind of person, which is a person which they get angry, but the anger dissipates, and it dissipates faster and faster. You don't hold on to the anger so long anymore, or frustration, or any of those other things which cloud the mind. Then there's a third kind of person in the simile, and it's like a person which been scribed, it's been written on the water. That kind of person, doesn't even really get angry, or it doesn't get angry. That's what the Buddha says. It's a person who the world abuses. The world says bad things. The world, what the samsara can give you. But that water, it doesn't leave a mark. You cannot leave a mark, even if you try to scribe on the water, it does not leave a mark. It dissipates slowly, straight away. So we need to aim to be that kind of person. We expect certain things from samsara. We can expect certain things. But we need to be like water in that simile, where it doesn't leave permanent marking. Maybe you're not the water yet. Maybe you are like a sand, which is close to the shoreline, and the wave of metta comes and washes away, the anger quite quickly, hopefully. And hopefully you are a person who is maybe not so close to the shoreline, maybe a little bit further, maybe half a meter. The waves doesn't hit it so quickly, but maybe the wind blows over and you forget about it quite fast. Or let's say it's a really strong anger in your life, really strong disappointment. What can you do? You're stuck. One of my anusatis, what I thought about I was teaching about earlier, is maranasati, contemplation of death. It's interesting, sometimes, I don't know if monks teach it a lot, but I know in West we don't teach that a lot. Some people seem to be a bit worried about it too much, but the contemplation of death, no matter how frustrated or angry you are at somebody, You can think of, this person will die. How can I be angry at a dead person? No matter how disappointed you are of yourself, I should have done something differently. This is, think about death contemplation. Now you are doing the right thing. You are alive and you are doing something. You are meditating. You're keeping your sila. You're a kind person. Death will come. At least you are practicing now. Now you have the time to do good karma by body, speech, and mind, and you are doing it. Remind yourself, the maranasati, death contemplation, it is important. So you have, let's say you are the second person, you are on the shoreline, the line is in the sand. What can erase it? Maybe a death contemplation. If it's really, really deep line in the sand, it doesn't seem to be getting erased by metta. Metta is not the wave of loving kindness, and it's not strong enough, not washing your anger away. Try something else. Try to have all these different kind of things in life where you can use the Buddha's teachings. And use the Buddha's teachings, whatever you come across in life. And that way, again, this path becomes a path of happiness. We are leaning towards more than Nibbana. So don't think you are wasting time if like nothing is happening, perhaps your meditation. You don't get the nimittas or jhanas, not every time you meditate, maybe not even every week or month or this lifetime. It's not waste of time. You are washing away all those things. You are putting in the effort. Every time you feel really relaxed, you are doing the work. It doesn't have to be more difficult than that. I was teaching last week. I don't have that many minutes, and hopefully you can hold on to a couple more minutes I give you. I'm going to finish the speech, and then I come back in a few more hours to give you the guided meditation. But last week, 2 weeks ago, I was meditating and we did the all-day meditation in our city center in Buddhist Society Victoria in Melbourne. And I was teaching the word of the Buddha, and then once in a while we meditate. And I said, okay, now is the time. I was teaching like this, and I said, okay, let's take a toilet break. And everybody's like, oh, relief, oh, I can take a break. Finally, he's been talking for a long time, and then I have to sit for a long, long time. Oh, but now I can take a break. So then people come from the toilet breaks after 10 minutes. I said, did you notice how relaxed you were when you took the toilet break? Oh, finally I can relax. I don't have to really try to understand this word of the Buddha. I don't have to really sit straight, this painful hour and a half. This is so difficult. I said, hang on. But when you took your toilet break, did you notice how nice and easy it is? That's what meditation should be. Meditation should be, that's how you should feel like. It's like, I'm just relaxing. I'm taking a toilet break. No one's telling me what to do, how to do things. If you are struggling and striving, you are going against the Buddha's teachings. You are creating anger, frustration. So see those things as a danger. See frustration as danger. How can I relax more? What can I do to be at ease? What is that feeling when I just take a break? It's not difficult. It's how difficult is it? Ajahn Brahm has the simile, beautiful simile, and this might be the last one. You might have all heard that. Ajahn Brahm has the simile of like a young child when they leave the school on the summer holiday. In Europe, we always have these long summer holidays because the summer is short, so we take long breaks on the summertime. But it's like that when it's the last day of the school, all the work is done. This is just the last day before the holiday starts. You're walking away from the school, and you know there is no more homework. There's this long holiday ahead of you. You don't really have to plan anything. There's nothing to expect. Life is just easy. Remember that feeling when you're coming towards home and you realize that there is no going to school tomorrow. That is like the freedom of what the Buddha had. I mean, many times over, probably. I'm sure it wasn't just freedoms of school, but relate to that. Have that like a contemplation, the anusati, freedom from school. Ah, that was a really nice feeling when you're walking from the school and you just have your holiday ahead of you. So today, when you are there all day, have that feeling of freedom. That's what the Buddha experienced, and that's what we should be aiming. Feeling of freedom is feeling of Dhamma. Leaning towards Dhamma, towards Nibbana, is not difficult if you understand really how to do it. And that is my talk.
I don't want to start thinking. Okay, let's start thinking. Number one, isn't anger also a form of energy that, if contemplated and understood properly and channelized, could lead to right reaction? Like joining a peace walk when angry, upset at the war, injustice in Gaza, and the Western military businesses industrial complex. Can we both liberate ourselves and help our fellow beings make the world a better place? Isn't the anger also a form of energy that, if contemplated, understood properly, and channelized, could lead to right action? It's a bit difficult with the anger. Yeah, I mean, I understand if there's like a righteous anger, you feel that if we don't have this anger, nothing will work, nothing will happen in the world. But really, I would be a bit careful with the anger, that it's with the righteous anger. It's definitely quite a common thing. But I would lead, even if you want to go against the injustice, there's always wars. There's wars in the world, and joining a peace walk. Don't go into the peace walk with anger. That you would know, the Buddha never recommended anger. Anger always leads more anger. It doesn't lead to peace, justice. By metta alone, by non-anger, the Buddha said, loving kindness, that leads to the end of anger. If you want to do something, don't come from a place of anger. Whatever you want to make a decision, it's always a bad time to decide something when you're angry, you're upset. Always wait until you are in a place of calmness, kindness. Then your mind is actually more clear. When you're coming from a place of anger, you're not really thinking clearly. The Buddha said angry person is like a person who's mad. Think anger like you're crazy. Don't think it as a good thing. So, sure, I can see that you could get energy from that, and contemplate it. But actually, with anger, you lose a lot of energy. Try to see that it's almost like an energy you're gonna lose. It's like a fire you don't want to hold. And sometimes we have this saying, it's like a hot coal. Don't hold on to the hot coal. Let it go. But sure, I mean, what caused Buddha to go forth? Why did Buddha live home life? It's because he saw the suffering in the world. If you see the suffering in the world, sure, that impels you. That makes you go forth, forward, or go against you're upset with the world. But it's an interesting thing. Like as a monk, you would think that we have a say because people listen to us, that we should be going for these marches, but quite often we don't. And the reason is we first try to find the peace within ourselves. We don't try to force the peace onto the world. You first need to find the peace inside of you, and then the world will follow. It's sometimes difficult to see, but wars will never end. That's an unfortunate thing in samsara. It just won't happen. So try to start the peace from yourself, and the world will start following you. I don't know how far you get with that, but obviously I would say go for peace walks, do all those things. But I would try to liberate yourself first, and not the world. Okay, number 2. If there is no soul or self, how do we break up the mind? What is really there? Or who or what is pushing us in a particular direction? Is it just all conditioning? Who is doing the conditioning? What is will? In short, who or what is really determining our path? Thank you. Okay, and much metta. Well, that's an interesting. There's a lot there to entangle, and that's one of my actually favorite subject, the anatta, non-self. If there is no soul or self, how do we break up the mind? Well, the Buddha broke up the mind in different ways, and we have the 6 senses. So we have the body has the 5, and the mind is the 6th, and the mind can be broken into these different things. Let's say, like I said earlier, mind itself is nothing. Your mind has to take an object. Mind cannot exist by itself. Whatever the object is, the mind. Whatever supports the mind, that's the name we give the mind. So if your mind is supported by, let's say, your perception, you perceive the world a certain way, you take that perception for one mind moment, and that becomes your mind. This ties really quite nicely with the other concept of anicca, impermanence or unreliability or changeability. Everything is always changing. It's all conditioning. Let's take for your rupa, your body, for example. You have 5 senses in your body. And with the 5 senses, whatever the sense is, let's say it's hearing, for one mind moment, it could be, there's no exact time limit there, but it is like however long that mind can hold that object. Let's say the hearing, you hear me, that hearing, it supports your mind for one mind moment, however long that is. Then that disappears, and then you look at the screen, and the seeing, you have to have an object, you have to see me, you have to have a conscious effort to pay attention. That conscious effort actually makes a big difference there. That supports your mind moment for one mind moment. But you cannot hear and see at the same time. I'll give you an example. Children like this example, and actually adults like it as well. But so that's how I explain it this way. If you're sitting on a cushion there and you feel your bum, when you pay attention, when there's a conscious effort, paying attention to your bum appears. Your bum is always there, but only when you pay attention to your bum, it appears. So what is your mind? You have bum mind. So wherever you pay attention to, that becomes you, that becomes your mind. Mind itself is nothing. So even if you didn't ever thought about your bum is always there. It's not disappearing, but in your mind, it doesn't exist. It's same like tasting. You pay attention to your tongue now, the tongue appears out of nowhere. But when you didn't pay attention to that taste, that tongue, it wasn't there. That supports the mind for a second. Mind moment, we would say. But only for one mind moment. And you can only pay attention to one thing at one time. So what is all this conditioning? Who is doing the conditioning? Conditioning is, who is doing the conditioning? You are doing the conditioning per se because you think there is a self. The conditioning, okay, I mean, conditioning is many things, but you take it as your, you take to be self from thin air. In Buddhism, we have this idea of karma. You could think of a karma as like your, if you have a river, your karma would be almost like the landscape. The river always flows with the landscape. And there is a river. I don't know what the rivers are in Colombo, but in Melbourne we have this river called Yarra River, and everybody knows there's a Yarra River. We can give it a name, but river needs water. Something needs to be flowing there, and everybody can see. Oh, of course, there's a Yarra River, but and the river flows according to the landscape. But if you go down to the Yarra River and you touch the water, and you take your hand out of the water and you touch it again, did you touch the same river? What is river? River is a concept. We give it a name. Of course, river exists and we can touch the river. But do you touch the same river again after that second touch? Is the water the same? No, the water is not the same. It's flowing. It's the same thing with your mind. Whatever is around you, I mean, there's many kind of conditioning out there, but your karma gives it almost like a shape. And the conditioning is your society. Your conditioning is perhaps whether you're born as a male or female. Your conditioning is many, many things. It's outside of our control, really. We don't really have free will. How do we relate to that? Even free will, it's an empty concept. We think it's like a mirage. We think we have will, but we can only will things which exist within our world. And it's a very, very limited choice we have. When you go to eat, you have a lunchtime there, and you can choose between apples and pears if they are there in the table, but you cannot choose something which is not there. And in the Buddhist terms, we would say, if you haven't had jhana, for example, deep meditation, can you choose that? Can you just will yourself into a jhana? You cannot. It's outside of your choice. You don't have that choice. We can only choose from what we know. And then the interesting thing about, let's say, deep meditation jhanas is that even when you get those experiences, when you start experiencing them, you don't really choose them. It's the inspiration what sucks you in there again. And that's the thing why it's interesting with somebody who gets jhanas. They get them, once you start getting them regularly, quite often, they just inspire you so much that they always keep pulling you in there. And it's the same way, why is that is the last part of the Eightfold Path, Samma Samadhi, the right samadhi, right stillness, like Ajahn Brahm would say. It always sucks you in. You cannot stop the process. Nobody has even free will. Nobody has free will even when they get deep meditation, not even the Buddha. Even the Buddha could not stop the process of getting enlightened. Even if once you're a stream enter, it just sucks you in. The path sucks you in, and you cannot stop it. Not that you can stop anything really, but it's interesting. It's interesting to think that way. Just that inspiration keeps you in the path, and this idea that somebody could willingly get reborn when they are starting to get into the path, it's absolute madness. You cannot stop the process, and the process gets almost faster and faster. To say somebody's a stream enterer, and you say that they would have 7 more lifetimes. Actually, they get born 6 more times. This is this, the 7th is this one we have now. To say that somebody would spend so many lifetimes is really difficult to understand. Really, they would be maybe not very smart person, because the inspiration would be so strong once you start getting to that it would just, you would end the suffering as fast as possible. How would you, if you understand suffering, how could you ever think that I just want to spend here as much, 7 more lifetimes, 6 more lifetimes? It's almost impossible. So, in short, who or what is really determining our path? This, in short, who is sort of you, but it's illusion. What, I don't know what the what would be. The path, the path works, and the what is, you could say the what is really determining our path is your karma. So whatever you effort you put, conscious effort becomes your karma, and that determines which way your tree is leaning. So that's the what. Your karma is what. So whatever you do, you can expect it back. Karma is not random. You do nice things, you put in good, you're kind person. What do you expect back? Kindness. That's what you can get. That's what you get back. Sometimes they say, I heard one time, a couple times, this quote, Albert Einstein said that God doesn't play dice. And I thought about it, and I said, like, well, it's the same thing with karma. Karma doesn't play dice. Karma is not random. If you're putting effort of being kind, soft, gentle person, that's what you get back. Not from the world. The world might not give it back to you, but you become that person. I was just thinking, a couple of weeks ago, I was in a teaching at our city center, and I said, one of the reasons what scares me, and why I have to put effort in this practice, one point I might end up in old people's home. That's what happens to us here in the West. There will be people washing my backside with the sponge, changing my diapers, hopefully once a day. I need to put effort to become a person who is soft, gentle, who doesn't own my body, right? Then when they're washing my backside, I'm just fine with it. When they're changing my diapers, I'm not too embarrassed about it. I'm just, I let it happen. I'm grateful for these people. That's the karma I'm putting in now. Think about it. Put in the effort or become an easy person be taken care of when you get old. That's what you get back. These people might be still rough, taking care of you, changing your diapers, but you are at ease with it. That's what you're then getting back. Okay. Wow, this might take long. I should give you a shorter answer. Sorry. Dear Ajahn, how do we practice mindfulness in the day-to-day life? What areas should we pay particular attention to? Kaya versus Vedana versus Chitta versus work one is doing a given moment? Mindfulness, okay, I give this shorter answer so you don't have to be there all day. How do we practice mindfulness day-to-day life? Pay attention what the mind is. So, okay, you could say Chitta is mentioned here, Vedana, perhaps. With the Kaya, it's good to bring your mindfulness back into your body once in a while. Once in a while, stop. Breathe. I'm still alive. Breathe into the tummy. Breathe in the kindness. All of those things are good. Whatever works for you. If your body, you need to pay attention. Okay, not maybe didn't mean Kaya with the body like a rupa, but with the Chitta as a mind, what is your mind state? How do you relate to the world? It's a good thing. And that could go with the Vedana, I guess. How do you look at the world? But pay attention, sort of the flavor of the mind. Am I looking the world with kind kindly eyes. Number 4, dear Ajahn, when I sit to meditate, my mind goes wandering without the knowledge. Sitting 30 to 60 minutes very still, but not being mindful. Can you please give some tips, guidelines to tackle this? It's very common. The mind goes wandering. If you look at the thing is, again, I mean, there is no really short answer to this, but the kindness is the fast way. And this is what I've learned from Ajahn Brahm over the years. And I truly believe that. Whatever it goes wandering, it doesn't matter so much. It's just how do you relate to that. If you start putting anger, what you get back is frustration and then more anger. Mind goes wandering, at least you are kind at the wandering mind. You pay kindness to your body. It's the same like people, quite often meditation is taught about, go back to the breath, go back to the breath, go back to the breath. And the mind is not interested. But if you go look at the breath with kindness, you're at ease with it, and it goes disappearing, it doesn't matter so much. Then you go looking for your friend. Look at it with kindness, not with frustration. Nobody can be frustrated. It's just, it doesn't work that way. Okay, number 5. This is the last one, almost there. Dear Venerable, maybe these are commentatorial writings, but I have heard of a king and a queen being reborn temporarily reborn temporarily in the animal realms because they were annoyed by a small incident at the time of passing over. Could this be why Sri Lankans apparently worry about the last thoughts affecting the rebirth? Perhaps. But whether that's the story, and why I'm sure the monks teach this, and I'm sure they have a very good reasoning why they teach it. But in my mind, it doesn't make sense. I can see that it would work in a certain way when you start getting when the death moment starts happening and you start moving into this kind of realm of the next birth, your mind is really free. When the mind is free from the body, it's really quick. It's not confined by the body. So the mind goes really quickly where it's inclined to. But I wouldn't be too worried about it. Sure, it might go to animal realm, but it wouldn't last long because your karma is not supporting it. Your karma supports you to be somewhere else. If you're a kind person, if you have a lot of metta, you just go to the Brahma world. There's no other way. Most likely, your karma is to get born as a human. That is what you're used to. That's where you're used to, that's where you made a lot of your karma. That's how it works. That's what I think. Okay, those are the answers. Anything from the whole? Comments?
Yeah, Bhante, if you don't mind, a kind of an addendum to the last question that you just explained. So, I mean, if a person is doing metta all the time and obviously not got a Magapala, I mean, does it essentially mean you go into a Brahma realm and spend eons and eons there, versus just there's no chance of kind of coming back and finishing off the thing, the samsara as such? No, absolutely no control, or?
Okay, so I mean, sure, your mind goes where it's inclined to. So if you do a lot of metta, that's where the mind inclines. But it is, Brahma worlds are very, very fine realms. To get to the Brahma world, really with the metta, you have to have jhanas. I cannot see how it would work without, even if you're just a person with a lot of kindness. If it's not accompanied by, if it's not together with deep, deep meditation, I don't think your mind inclines to the Brahma world quite. It could work that way, but and the Buddha was teaching a few places to go there, but no, only if you already are not just stream enter, but if you non-returner, you don't return from there. But if you're once returner, you still, yes, you spend a lot of time there from Brahma world, let's say, a meta world, and then you return from loving kindness to here one more time. It's not just one-way ticket. But to think that somebody who's not a stream enter to go there, I think is possible, but I haven't really thought about it too much. But you would have to be such a pure person, but I cannot see why it wouldn't work. Whatever your mind inclines to. Sometimes I think, my auntie asked me one time, she's Christian, so sort of. She said, "Oh, what's going to happen to me when I die?" I said, "Yeah, you probably go to heaven." Why? Because she's Christian, she's inclined to go to heaven. That's where you go to, right? Because her mind inclines there. As a Buddhist, we understand that's not eternal, that's not everlasting happiness. We might still incline there, but we have to keep practicing that even that is not everlasting. That's still part of the samsara. So we just keep adding. And there's an interesting, I don't know if you want to see, but there's a kangaroo. I think I'm doing metta. I'll show you. There's two kangaroos. There's a little one, and the mother just came there. Can you see? They just came to look at me, and they're just behind my window, I think, because I'm doing metta, and they just came to look what's happening here. Anyways, so that's what's happening here in Newbury. So yes, you do return from Brahm world, and sometimes they say, I've heard a few times, the speed is really fast. Once you stumble from high places, you tend to go really fast, and you might go below human realm. I don't know how it works, but I think it's almost like you're depressed, or however you want to look at it. You go below human sometimes. The Buddha said, okay, one more thing. Even the highest, even the non-returner, that's almost ultimate ending of suffering. The Buddha said even that is like a little bit of excrement, poo under your fingernail. Even that has a little bit of smell. It's not pure. Only ending of all suffering. The Arahant, that's the end of all suffering. Don't aim to get born in a Devaloka Brahma world. Even that's close, but not close enough. Very good. Thank you so much. It was very pleasure to see you all, and very nice to see your kind faces. Very good.
Thanks a lot, Bhante.
Nibbana Chapachaya Hotu. I hope you attain the ultimate bliss of freedom in this very lifetime. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Aibo. Dharma Saranai.